I would say the most valuable thing if you want to start your own company is resilience or
Mm.
grit. I think the younger generation does need to learn resilience because the world is only getting harder. I mean, what we went through with COVID, my son was in college, like they had to deal with that at sort of a prime time in their life. Well,
Hmm.
that's gonna, unfortunately, I think, like, who knows, 2 years it could be another strain of something, 5 years
Hmm.
it could be something else, it could be a tsunami, it could be this, it could be that. There's so many things like that that they have to figure out how to persevere despite those kind of external challenges, I think.
I'm Julie B, and they don't teach this in business school. Hey there, I'm Julie B, and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School, a podcast where we discuss business ownership lessons that are learned through experience, not in a classroom. Today's episode is special because I get to interview Lynn Power, co-founder and CEO of Mossamy. And I know we're just going to have a really great conversation about some of the lessons that she has learned being a business owner and just the journey that she's been on. So, Lynn, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I'm super excited about our conversation today.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here too. There are so many lessons to share that hopefully people can learn from and not make the same mistakes I've made. So I love that you're doing this. And yeah, I can't wait to just jump in.
Well, before we jump into all of those lessons and the good and the bad and the ugly and the awesome, tell us about Mossamy. Tell us about your business and your role in the company.
Yeah, so this could be a long question or a long answer, I should say. It was a short question with a long answer, but
Okay.
I will try to make it succinct.
Yeah.
So I spent 30 years in marketing and advertising, and I was running large agencies, and I left in 2018, and then I met my co-founder, James, who had been working on our formulations for about 10 years. It's really hard to make clean salon quality formulas
Mm-hmm.
when you take out the sulfates, parabens, and phthalates.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that 90% of the products in the beauty market still have that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
even though they're toxic. It's because they do help performance. So you have to find alternative ingredients. That took a little bit of time, a lot of time,
Like a
10
decade.
years, a decade.
Mm-hmm.
But then once we felt like, oh my God, we have something that
Yeah.
was really exciting, we launched at New York Fashion Week in February of 2020. Little did we know what was to come. It was quite an interesting year. And then in 2021, I got breast cancer. So that made it even a more interesting journey. And that led to some interesting outcomes, though. And it's not all bad.
Yeah. And tell us what Mossamy is. Tell us exactly
Ah,
what your product
yeah.
is. Yeah.
That would help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Masami is clean premium hair care. We have a Japanese ocean botanical called Mikabu. That's like our secret sauce. It's what gives us our ability to do weightless hydration. So we hydrate your hair, but we won't weigh it down.
Mm.
So it won't look flat, which a lot of other moisturizing shampoos will do.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. So, Lynn, now let's get into some of these fun lessons about being a business owner. What, just to start that off, what is your favorite part about being a business owner?
Well, for me, it's about control because when I was running ad agencies, there's so much stuff out of your control, including a big public lawsuit that we're dealing with, and just so many things that you're just trying to, like, put out fires all day. When you have your own business, at least the fires are many times of your making. Not always, but at least you can kind of wrangle and wrap your arms around it, and you can prioritize what you want to be spending your time on. Well, one of the hard things to do for a lot of people, and I knew this when I was managing a lot of teams, a lot of people are not good at identifying their skill set.
Mm.
That's really important when you're a small business owner, because if you're not good at something, but you think you are, and you're spending a lot of time doing it, and you're not good at it actually, then it's bad for you, bad for the business. So you do have to have like a real honest self-reflection of what stuff, not that you want to do, but what stuff are you actually good at? And what stuff do you need to outsource and where can you get help and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And if you're, one thing I run into along these same lines is there are things that I'm good at that are easy to outsource that I still sometimes want to do. For example, I actually love to do bookkeeping. I have an accounting background, so it took me a long time to actually outsource my bookkeeping, even though I knew I could pay somebody a really affordable rate to take care of it. It was hard for me to let that go. So even then, sometimes even if you got to be able to recognize, even if you are good at something and you do enjoy doing it, should you be doing it? That's also a question in
Yes.
there.
A good point, actually, really good point. And I do not like doing bookkeeping. So that is one of the things that I definitely outsource. QuickBooks is not my friend.
Yeah. So, you said something interesting about the control part of it. And I totally get that. I mean, that's a lot of business owners will say they would be horrible employees at other companies because they like that control. But I'm really interested in, because you launched your company at a time when we went into this unprecedented time in our history during the COVID pandemic. You launched in 2020 in February, I think is what you said, in New York Fashion Week. So how did you launch a company because you like the control, and then you're out of that control in some ways. So how did you like navigate that?
You know what? As somebody who's pretty type A, is not easy because it was, again, to exactly your point. It's like, I'm doing this to try to control my life a little bit and do the things I want to do. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the business plan that we'd put together, that went out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Salons are closed. So all those partnerships that were in my head are not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what I really just ended up doing is deciding, okay, what can I actually still control? I can control brand partnerships with other brands. I started doing a bunch of those, and those were extremely beneficial. And we'll talk more about that because then it became an even bigger thing we're doing
Mm-hmm.
in Conscious Beauty Collective, where I'm sitting now, is
Yeah.
part of that. So I started doing things like that. I started saying, okay, we're DTC at the heart. I can control that. I can control my relationship with my customers. I can do content. There's a lot I can still do, even though there's so much uncertainty
Yeah.
swirling around me. So that's what I really did, is just focus on that stuff, which was good to kind of give me the foundation for the business anyway. And, I always say to people that are thinking of starting out, I mean, there's so much that you underestimate. And one of those things is just how much content you really, really need. And it's a shit ton.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So like, you know what I mean? Like, so being forced to focus on that was not a bad thing at all. And these days there's so many great AI tools that will do some of that work for you. So you don't really have an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to spend a lot. This is, again, like, you could spend a ton of time and money
Mm-hmm.
on content, but you don't really need to. It's another one where there's lots of free tools out there now while
Mm-hmm.
things are still sort of in beta form.
Yeah.
And you can be a guinea pig like I am and experiment with a lot of them, but get stuff for basically nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and give you at least an arsenal of tools and, content. Because you have to be on social media as much as
Mm-hmm.
it's, for a lot of us, like, yeah, it's not something you want to be doing. It's hard to launch a business these days, any type of business these days, and not do some of it.
Yeah, and I mean, my first business is a social media marketing agency that is still running. That I'm only in about 5 hours a month at this point, but there's so much stuff. So a lot of the times, business owners, they come to me, they're overwhelmed, and I've actually even found my own self moving away from being the producer of everything and being more of the, here's how you can use all these tools. Let's get your system set up, and then you go do your thing because you need to put your own
Yeah.
spin on it. And I think that that's kind of where that's where a lot of marketing agencies are going, but that's a whole different conversation. But I appreciate that. And I want to, what was the name of that? What was the name of that AI tool again for the
Oh,
images?
trend.io.
Trend.io. Okay, cool. Yeah. So just for our listeners, in case they're looking for something
Yeah.
like that, there you go.
Yep. There's another one also called Clade, CLAID. So you
Wow.
can
Okay.
check out
Got it.
Either of them. I think there's a bunch.
Okay.
I think those are just a couple, but yeah, check them
Yeah.
out because again, like it just allows you to generate hundreds of images
Yeah.
in no time. I mean, now some of them look like they're AI, some of them
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
It depends. Sometimes I'm fine with it looking AI.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I mean, I've even posted stuff where I'm like, can you believe AI did this? This is crazy. So it just depends on what you're going for
Yeah.
your own aesthetic.
That's really fascinating. And I'm also like, there's also this element of like what we talked about, the control of how, even with AI, you do still have control. I think that's, I mean, you can't just let it run your whole business. You do have to have you've got to have those elements of checkpoints, quality control
Yeah.
checkpoints and things, but you can still have control with that. So, well, Lynn, I want to ask you, I know you've been in business for a few years, even though it feels like it took a decade to get your formulation together, which I does not surprise me. I've heard that a lot. But what is one of the bigger wins that you've had, one of the bigger success stories that you've had over the past, few years in business that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it really, it's like you teed this up perfectly because I was gonna say it's the Conscious Beauty Collective, which I referred
Got
to
it.
earlier.
Uh-huh.
That has been fantastic. So what had happened was we started doing collaborations with other clean beauty brands during COVID
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to from the get-go. Some of them that were sort of like reticent to do that for whatever reason were suddenly open because I think they realized, oh my God, like
Mm-hmm.
gotta do stuff. So we were able to do some really good partnerships and we were able to grow our email list organically from about 2,000 to now it's about 35,000,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
or almost 40,000 even. But
Yeah.
so anyway, and so then when I got breast cancer, I had a year of treatment and there was about 9 months when I was a bald hair care founder. So yes, I appreciate the irony there.
Jeez.
Um,
Yeah.
Yes, but during that time, I was also reflecting on where to spend my time because I had lots of doctor appointments. I was going through these, 6-hour chemo
Mm.
sessions. I had radiation every day for 6 weeks. Like there's just, I had my surgery. So I couldn't do all the stuff that I wanted to do. And I couldn't do Zoom calls and I couldn't do in-person stuff because I was bald. So I started thinking about these partnerships and like, okay, these have worked really well for the business. How can I scale it? Because when you're only doing a couple at a time, it's great, but you're really not getting a huge impact. If I could do 30 at a time, oh my God, that would be amazing. So that's how this idea of the Conscious Beauty Collective was born because I
Mm-hmm.
was really thinking about, the power of small indie brands to help each other. We could help each other grow. So we launched a pop-up in San Francisco in 2022. I had to think about my years last year.
Yeah, that was
And
last year. I get it. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, April, May, June, and then we moved to Natick Mall outside of Boston for the holidays, and now we're in Southern California. We're at
Oh,
Victoria Gardens and Rancho Cucamonga.
okay.
And the thing that I really love about that, and this will relate back to your lessons again, is how important it is to have a community of people who know what you're dealing with, know what you're going through, maybe have gone through similar things, if not identical things, and just can be your sort of support system and your system to vent and your system to like even things like I was having a real problem getting the cable company that we had to use for our internet for the Natick Mall.
Mm-hmm.
They kept billing me after I closed my account in January, still to this day. Like I was so I posted on LinkedIn. I was so like annoyed because
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've been calling that. I've burned about 20 hours trying to deal with this. And all the founders jumped on it and were posting it and reposting it and commenting, and that got them to pay attention and fix it.
Mm.
So
That
it's the
community
power.
element is so
Yeah.
important as a
Yeah.
business owner. I mean, really in all parts of life, but especially as a business owner because being able to just post. I actually saw that LinkedIn post because I was stalking you a little bit before this interview, but I saw that and I just thought how cool it was that you could ask that and then get some resolution to that problem.
Well, I wish I would have thought of it sooner because the amount of hours I burned, but what it did is there was one of the founders from the collective was like, "Oh my God, that worked unbelievably well. We could do that for all of our issues. Like if
Yeah.
anyone has a problem, now you know, you can literally just do that."
Yeah.
And then of course I was like, well, it doesn't have to just be about problems. It
Hmm.
could also be if we're trying to connect with a beauty editor who's been very elusive and if a bunch of us reach out, that might have more impact. So like there's lots of ways when you start to really think about
Yeah.
how to leverage the power of that group. And that's pretty cool. And I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface of what we could start to do together. We're now going to look at doing Amazon co-promotion together because a lot of us are on Amazon
Hmm.
because kind of have to be.
Yeah.
So
Great.
I'm really psyched about what opportunities are going to come up out of this.
Hey, this is Julie B, and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School. I'm here with Lynn Power today, and we were just talking about some of the things that she's had success with and community and support and how important that is. But Lynn, I want to ask you kind of the flip side of that question. If you have, do you have any mistakes that you've made in business that if you could go back and change them, you would? And if you have any of those, would you be willing to share them?
Yeah, I've got plenty. I don't think we have enough time, but I will share
Probably
a
not.
couple of them. So one of them was that early on, I was right when we started coming out of COVID, I did a deal with a salon to co-brand product for them. So it was branded their name and Masami.
Mm.
So it wasn't private label per se, because my brand name was still on
Mm-hmm.
there. Um, but but minimum package quantities to get stuff printed and all that, I had to print like 1,000 bottles. And they had said to me, well, we want to kind of pay as we go, but this is something we're committed to, and we're gonna do our first order for like 200. And so I was like, okay, but I had explained to them, well, okay, I have to order more because that's the MOQs. But if you guys really think you're going to be using it up, awesome. Well, I'm an idiot because I did not get that in writing.
Mm-hmm.
And a year later, they were shutting down salons. The CEO left. The new person was like, well, we might rebrand. So like, I had all this inventory,
Reprinting costs because the old
you
logo is on the
know,
bottle. Yeah.
Yep. So
Mm.
I literally am like, I have all this inventory that I invested in because they were so bullish about this partnership. And I stupidly went along with it without, again, getting a commitment in writing that they were going to want that inventory. I should have made them pay for all of it up front, but
Mm-hmm.
that was a lesson. So now I am not going to be doing that again.
Well, and sometimes those lessons sometimes we have to learn lessons that cost us money, and I think that's
Yeah.
just the reality of business. One of my friends that I interviewed, geez, I don't know, like 2 years ago at this point, I think, he said that there's this running joke that being a business owner is just a really creative way to learn how to lose money. And there's some truth in that because some of the mistakes that we just kind of have to make do cost us money. So I would say don't beat yourself up too much about that. Now, just everything in writing, pay up front, and you'll never do that. You'll never do it again, and
I
that's really the
know.
sign of growth. Yeah.
It's hard because I spent so long in the corporate world where
Mm-hmm.
you didn't really have those issues, right?
Yeah.
It's like you really didn't have a client that was going to just not pay you, um or that kind of thing. So yeah, it was definitely like, oh, I had to realize that, like, as a small business owner, you do have to be more cautious about those types of investments. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to be trusting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a sucker that way. I want to think everybody's going to do the right thing, and a lot of people won't, or don't care.
That is absolutely right. There are, unfortunately, there are people out there. I think I would say a lot of business owners really do want to help other business owners be successful and small business. I see that in small business, but there are some out there that are not. And you just have to be aware of that. But yeah, get it in writing. I think any attorney listening to this would be saying, get it in writing. Even if it's just in an email sometimes, that's enough. But lesson learned. So, Lynn,
Lesson learned.
I want to also ask you, have you ever gone through burnout in your business?
Yes and no. I mean, I've had like each year has been so dramatically different
Yeah.
from the COVID year to my breast cancer year to then really I just finished treatment last September of 2022. So this year feels like my coming out year
Mm,
because I being a bald founder, I couldn't go to trade shows, I couldn't even do Zooms. So once my hair grew back, suddenly I was like, woo woo, like I'm
yeah.
out. I'm doing stuff. I'm going to shows. I'm going to conferences. I'm speaking at conferences. I'm having a ball. So
Yeah.
in a way, I've managed to sort of mitigate my burnout because I'm focused on like I almost have like larger goals that I want to accomplish for the year. And then I have my micro goals that are like everyday stuff that keeps me busy. And so when I kind of look at my year, I'm like, okay, I want to do another pop-up. I want to go to these conferences. I want to start to speak. I want to, I have
Mm-hmm.
like bigger goals. And then that keeps me, I'm not saying I can avoid burnout completely, but
Mm-hmm.
it does help because it mixes it up a little. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the same monotony of the same stuff all the time.
And it's interesting because I feel like, you have with business started COVID, then cancer, then, and now you feel like this is the year that you're emerging. It's an interesting dynamic there because I feel like those things, I can't even imagine. I mean, I started my first business in the financial crisis of '08. So that was just like one massive thing that was going on in the world. But you had several big things happening, both in the world and to you personally that I feel like you probably learned some skills through that will help you mitigate and prevent burnout throughout the rest of your career as a business owner for sure.
I mean, one thing that cancer does in a positive sense is it does force you to reevaluate your life priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, most of us get so stuck in the weeds that you don't lift your head up and look around and see what's going on. But so when you do have cancer and you have, like, I had stage 3 cancer, I needed aggressive treatment. I had a
Mm-hmm.
very rare kind of cancer. So, you know, it wasn't as simple as, oh, you just get it cut out and you're
Yeah, you're
back on
good.
your
Yeah.
way.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have a lot of time to sort of think about that and reflect. And I also had two women that I know that I've worked with over the last few years died of breast cancer. And so, yeah, so for me, it was like, okay, I'm super lucky that mine responded to chemo and I got through the treatment. But
Mm-hmm.
then what do I want to do with my life spent? How do I want to spend my days? And this goes kind of back to the beginning of
Yeah.
I got to get rid of some of the things I'm bad at
Yeah.
and hire a bookkeeper and like get some of that stuff off my plate so I'm not screwing it up anymore. Um, but then also just what are the things that are giving me joy?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just for this store, I got my daughter and her boyfriend are now working in the store with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my goals for this year. I said to my husband, I want to spend more time with my kids and I
Mm-hmm.
want my daughter Katie to be part of the business. She's 19.
Yeah.
She really didn't have any interest in doing it, but I kind of twisted her arm and she's been great. It's worked out really, really well. So I'm really happy about that. So
That's
like, yeah,
that's awesome.
that just makes me on so many levels, just yes, makes it me feel like it's worth it.
You're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School. I'm the host, Julie B., and I'm here with Lynn Power today, and we're just having a great conversation about kind of the bigger picture of being in business and why you're in business. And Lynn, I feel like one question that I love to ask business owners, and I definitely want to ask you this is, what legacy do you hope to leave with what you're doing? You've got two businesses going on now, and you've been
Yeah.
through a lot. And what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Well, I said to my daughter the other day that I want her to take over my business, and she was like, I don't want to be a CEO. I don't want to do that. She'll change her mind, I'm sure. But I mean, from a societal perspective, we want businesses to be more accountable and responsible, and therefore want to sort of show what you can do as a small business in terms of um, creating positive impact, sustainable practices, making products that are not toxic, that are not
Mm-hmm.
going to give you cancer, give you allergies,
Mm-hmm.
create all sorts of other issues, be endocrine disruptors. There's so many people don't realize how bad the cosmetic industry is in terms of the products that are on the shelf today are really bad for you. And the pushback sometimes I get from people is, well, they wouldn't be allowed to be sold if they gave you cancer. Now, what people don't understand is the cosmetic industry in the US is very unregulated.
Mm-hmm.
So we only ban 11 ingredients as opposed to I think it's like 1,300 in Europe now.
Mm-hmm.
So just even things like formaldehyde in your mascara, like just there's stuff like that. So anyway, my point being, I would love to feel like I've made a contribution to get people to clean up and detox their beauty routine. Um, that would make me feel great. That and getting my daughter to take over the business,
Yeah.
I could go tomorrow and be happy.
That's an interesting conversation because your daughter's 19, and there's definitely that those ages between like 19 and I don't know 25, 26, 27. There's a lot of growing up that you do. So hopefully you'll get to that, and you know your daughter, so that's interesting. So one thing I do also want to ask you, because we've talked about control and we've talked a lot about like making sure you're doing the things that you need to be doing. Are there any tasks that, or general job duties that you do find are particularly difficult to get off your plate? Maybe they keep coming back to you. Maybe you've tried to outsource them and delegate them. Is there anything like that that you find that for some reason you just can't seem to get it off your plate?
Yeah, there are probably quite a few. Social media is one because
Mm-hmm.
every time you try to outsource it, I find either it doesn't deliver the way that the social media person you hired claims it would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
gonna get all the engagement and stuff. And then you're like, well, it's performing worse than the stuff I did. Like,
Yeah.
but I think part of that is, and this is not always the case. Obviously, I have an agency background, so I
Mm-hmm.
am an advocate of pulling in resources when you
Mm-hmm.
need them. But sometimes as a small business owner, you know your business better than anyone. And it's more authentic for me to post something and talk about it. I've gotten a lot more comfortable posting about myself,
Mm-hmm.
even when I was going through my cancer journey. So, that's something it's hard for somebody else to do.
Mm-hmm.
They can't really pretend to be me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that stuff does keep coming back on my plate. I don't really mind because,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, with AI, with like getting more content
Yeah.
generated, it's a lot easier than me having to shoot videos and do stuff every day.
Yeah.
I do a lot of live streaming too for
Mm-hmm.
similar reasons because I think getting the brand story in a more authentic way, hence why I like doing podcasts and I like these
Mm-hmm.
kind of conversations because I
Yeah.
think I think people want to kind of hear some unvarnished reality and
Mm-hmm.
sort of the backstory. So
Yeah.
that stuff is hard for me to give up. I think in anything marketing related is a little hard to give up, but
Mm-hmm.
I have managed to turn over Kristen, who works with me. She's a friend of mine from high school. We reconnected and now she's been working with me on Masami. She does all of my emails now and she'll do a lot of partnerships, giveaways, content, and that's been so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard because some of these things it's hard to half-ass, you
Oh
kind
yeah.
of you got to go deep and figure it out. It's and that's not really my strength is understanding Flavio's inner workings, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, you're the visionary and you know where you want things to go, and yeah, I get that. And especially when you're talking about what I heard is it's hard to have somebody else speak for your business basically. Social media is where a lot of your platform is, but it sounds like you have somebody who can help you with the emails, which is great. But I get that. I mean, I am really I've been in the agency world as well in that industry, and I'm now more focused on like helping business owners. Business owners often want it to be easy and want to, like anything you delegate. I think you just want to delegate and only have to quality control it. But I think marketing is one of the hardest things to delegate in the world we live in today because people expect this level of authenticity, and integrity and transparency, and it's hard to delegate that. You've got to really have somebody who, I mean, it takes time to build that relationship, and it's not something that, if you're, fast results, they don't usually happen if you have to spend 6 months building that relationship. So anyways, yeah, I'm all about like figure out somebody who can edit for you and push buttons for you and actually publish it, but like create the original stuff yourself if you can, because it just works better these days.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, listen, Lynn, I've had such a good time talking with you. I cannot believe we've already been recording for like 30 minutes. That's crazy.
I
But I just, I tend to wrap up these conversations with this question. If you were going to teach a class to future business owners, people who might want to go into business for themselves one day, what is like one major lesson you would want them to learn from your class?
Oh my gosh, I would say the most valuable thing if you want to start your own company is resilience or grit, however you want to talk about it. There's that great book on grit by, I think it was Angela Duckworth. But anyway, I think a lot of, in my opinion, because I think I can say this credibly with a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, that that generation doesn't really know how to dig in hard.
Yeah.
And I think us Gen Xers have a really strong work ethic for the most part. I'm generalizing, but I think the younger generation does need to learn resilience because the world is only getting harder. I mean, what we went through with COVID, my son was in college, like they had to deal with that at sort of a prime time in their life. Well, that's gonna, unfortunately, I think, like, who knows, 2 years it could be another strain of something, 5 years it could be something else, it could be a tsunami, it could be this, it could be that. There's so many things like that they have to figure out how to persevere despite those kind of external challenges, I think.
Yeah. You have to keep going. I think that's the resilience piece of it, being able to, fail, have something not work, and just, and even sometimes not even look at it as a failure, just say, okay, I learned a lesson there. I'm never going to do it that way again. And pick yourself up and keep going. And maybe you may even have to do the same exact thing, but you're going to do it differently. You might be the same type of deal, but you're going to do it differently. And just being able to do that. I see that as well, in generations that are, I don't want to, I don't want to bash generations. I do know, actually, I do know a couple of millennials that I think have learned that, and they're super resilient and just go after it. So, but there is there's that resilience and grit and relentlessness. You just got to be able to go for it and keep going for it. I think that's probably why a lot of businesses fail in the first year, is that people just quit. They just stop because it got too hard. And
realize it's like, it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I'm teaching a class right now. Well, by the time this airs, it'll be over. But anyways, I'm teaching a class right now that we were talking last night, and they were asking me, like, how long should it take before I can expect to make a profit? And I was like, well, it depends. Like, that's a loaded. There are companies out there today that have been running for 10 years that still aren't turning a profit. So. Exactly. I mean, I think you have to decide that for yourself, but I just said I would say, 2 years, like, and just, if you get there sooner, great. If not, then know that you're not alone, because there are companies that have literally been operating for 10 years that are still not profitable. That's a whole different conversation, but yeah, just that grit and that resilience, very important lesson. And you have it in spades with everything that you've been through. I can feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's like you do find it when you need it, right?
Yeah, you really do. Well, Lynn, listen, I have so enjoyed this conversation. I just want to thank you for being on the show today. And why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and find out more information about you?
Yeah, sure. I'm super easy to find. You can find me through Masami. Our website is Love Masami. Our social handle is Love Masami Hair pretty much everywhere, including TikTok, which I just started doing. Um, Personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter at Lynn Powered, also on Facebook the same way. So yeah, hit me up, send me questions, send me your hair questions.
There you go. All right. And that is a wrap on this episode, but please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcasting app so that you don't miss out on future conversations. I'm Julie B., and they don't teach this in business school.